We're back, baby. Happy post Thanksgiving. Are you still in a food coma?
I'm doing pretty good because I was a very conscientious eater this Thanksgiving.
Well, that makes one of us because I was not. I think I.
I said I put a 1 inch extendo border on the plate, and as long as it only hung off an inch, it was okay.
Well, it was a good holiday to be grateful, spend some time with family, with friends, drink good wine, eat some good food. Did you
Lots of
guys?
wine.
I enjoyed that nice bottle from Dakota Shy that you gifted us, the big boy,
Oh, the tall one.
the tall boy.
That was good. I had a shout out to Grant and Austin and Dan over at Reverie and A&R. I had a A&R Reverie collaboration from 2020, the one they send us every year for being the joint members.
Yep.
I did that. I did some Tarot song. I did some good stuff. I mean, I was having a great, I had to open up multiple more bottles because my friends came over there where I wasn't expecting. Andrew stopped by, had a bunch of people that came by, and we were definitely purple teeth smilers by the end of the night. I'll put it that way.
Oh, well that we were as well. I saw this. I thought this was pretty
Oh,
funny.
I thought my computer just messed up. I was like, whoa,
Can you hear this?
no, nope.
Turkey's great this year. Oh yeah, it's almost like it's great again.
I mean, kind of, not really.
Mashed potatoes are good. Oh yeah, I got them for cheap. It's almost like grocery prices are going down. Weird. Oh God, this is giving me gas. Well, you're about to get a lot more gas. Olane. The prices are going down.
Can you could you have heard could you hear
I
that?
heard that because prices are going down. Because prices are going down. Yeah, gasoline. Yeah, I don't know what that's from though. Is that it sounds like Matthew McConaughey.
No, I think it's just one of those TikTok skits where somebody is reenacting the left and the right family discussions over the dinner table. But hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving and is back to business. I don't know how I was going to say I don't know how much activity people are looking to put in to close out the year. I know you and I are grinding and working. We find some of our best opportunities in this
Final
time of
days of the
year.
year. Yeah.
And there's a lot going on, at least from the political front, tying
Hmm.
into policy, just a lot that has to do with Trump's cabinet picks and how this policy is tying into global, domestic policy and economics. One of the, I think, big things that is taking over the internet today is Biden officially pardons
Yeah.
his son, Hunter Biden, and not just for the laptop and some of the things that were front and center over the last 4 years, but he basically pardoned him for what, like a 10 or
A
an
dec
11-year period?
I think it was a decade back, if I remember correct.
What does that say?
Well, I think it says everything. It says exactly what has been being said about him. I think it's funny because the it was like being politicized that I guess it was unfair his trial because he's being politically persecuted and targeted, completely breezing over the fact that that's the exact same thing that was done to Trump, except it was done in a way that was non-judicial, not fair. Evidence wasn't presented. There was a lot of backroom deals looking like they made their way to the front.
Access
Versus
to
in
the big guy.
Hunters, yeah, versus in Hunters, he had a trial, evidence was presented, he was clearly guilty, was convicted, and was going to go to his sentencing trial, and they are avoiding that with the pardoning. And I'm not hating on it. Like if it was my family member or whatever, I'm gonna have their back. I'm gonna say I'm just not gonna blatantly lie about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I love this. Elon Musk posted this today. Community notes slays. It's Joe Biden's
Oh, I
quote,
saw that from
no
like
one is
earlier in the
above the
year.
yeah, no one is above the law, right? And then by pardoning his son Hunter, not merely for a single crime, but for all actual or potential crimes he may or may not have created over or committed over an 11-year period, Joe Biden has made clear that some people are, in fact, above the law. There was some pretty good videos that were kind of surfacing today that they're going to eat this stuff up, right? When it comes to the left line, the right's going to hold him accountable for it. Let me see if I can pull up some of these videos. There were some pretty good ones in here on all of the kind of talking heads going on.
No one is above the law. Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Right. Those were all of the talking heads saying basically when Trump's trial was going on, no one is above the law. You even have
The president would not pardon or communicate sentence for his son Hunter. I want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying it would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add.
so like they're just making them completely eat their words today. But like you said, we kind of knew it was coming. And if anything, it kind of opens up the door for Trump to do what likely he wants to do, right? Which is most likely going to be to come in there and pardon some of the J6ers.
Yep.
Right. And
Yeah.
kind of he's going to be able to do it without them saying that, he can't do those things because, well, that would make them hypocrites.
Yeah, the guy that killed the other dude in the subway in the chokehold, that would be a good first move. I think he's a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like I said, it's going to be a really tumultuous beginning. I know a lot of people are going to complain. I felt that way myself, except I'm an adult, so I don't act like a child. When things don't go my way, I don't go and throw a fit. I just complain a little bit and have a glass of wine and move on. But I'm expecting in January to March, people are going to do their rioting thing. They're going to try. They're going to try, and they're going to do it all the way up until January 20th. And then I think what people are going to realize is like law and order are going to kind of come back. And I don't want anybody going to jail. That people don't need to go to jail to go to jail. That's not the point of that. But when people blatantly break rules and laws, and if you do it because you're protesting, it's okay. But then if you're protesting but you're conservative, it's not okay. So it's just not fair. If you do destruction to property, no matter what political party you serve or support, you need to be punished for that. People should not be allowed to riot. People should not be allowed to cause unsafe spaces for the public to be in on taxpayer funded. Hey, you want to go do that? Do it on your private property, by all means. Get off the sidewalk, get out of parks, get out of streets. These are taxpayer funded areas, and you should not be allowed to do the kind of stuff that has been accepted and allowed over the past 4.5, 5 years. So I'm very excited for that to kind of come to an end. We'll always have to deal with it to an extent, or not always, for the time being, have to deal with it in an extent in California. But the tide's turning here as well, which is really great to see.
Yeah, it is. We've got Mark Zuckerberg making Mar-a-Lago has been busy the last couple of weeks. You got Justin Trudeau coming down from Canada talking about the tariffs. You got Mark Zuckerberg heading over to Mar-a-Lago saying that he wants to work with the Trump administration on forging a new future. So it really seems to be like there's a lot of positive energy and momentum around the Trump presidency, him coming in.
More shit has gotten done under a non-president incoming in the past 3 weeks than has happened in the past 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm honest to God, I'm really, if I really try to scratch my brain and I say, okay, what's been headline news? Another round of funding is approved for Ukraine. I mean, that's all I've been seeing. Or there's some tension, geopolitical tension happening over here. Or So, long story short, very exciting to see. Just things get done. You don't gotta like the guy. I'm not in love with the dude. I don't think he's the nicest person in the world. I think he's hilarious sometimes because I have a sense of humor and I can laugh at other people and myself. But yeah, I mean, the policy stuff he's going to implement is going to be awesome. I'm hoping that it can be done in a way that is inviting and accompanying. I know I was kicking salt in people's wounds a couple weeks ago after the election. I was just having a little bit of fun. Love everybody. Come on over. Come on. The grass is green over here when you cut it. That way we can continue with this, get another 4 to 8 years in succession on top of this current administration so we can get kind of the country back on track. I'm happy for both sides to have a voice. I think compromise is typically the healthiest way forward so that no one gets their way 100%. But I'm definitely over the brim of the cup on the last 8 years of politics. It's just exhausting. And
Yeah.
I just hate being around, like constantly being around politics. It was like never a part of my life. And then now, without my consent, it's like constantly a part of my life. People care how I think, even though I don't care how they think. They can go about their day to day. Why can't I go about my day to day? So yeah, I'm tired of it. So
Well,
I'm excited for it to get back to rule and order.
well, I think it aligns that feeling, right? I can definitely agree to having that same kind of feeling of like just politics being so heavy and consuming everywhere. And the word of the year, according to Oxford, their word of the year is brain rot. Supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially viewed as a result of overconsumption of a particular material. And so when you think about what we've been somewhat forced to consume and most likely overconsume for a lot of people, feeling like it felt like such a heavy, important election, there's a lot of brain rot that I think people are recovering from as we come out of this haze of the election.
Yep. And also people realizing that the bike isn't that hard to ride. That old nostalgic feeling that we all came to when we were younger. Um, how being maybe conservatives aren't evil. Maybe they aren't Nazis. Maybe they don't want to do that. I'm excited for that to be realized.
Yeah.
And for people to kind of come to their senses and say, hey, you know, people over here, let's get back to we can still have our differences. But what happens if things go wrong? Who's gonna help you? It's probably gonna be your neighbors, right? So we want to make sure we keep that type of American spirit alive and healthy. I do think there's going to be a lot of people that are pissed off about deportations as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Is how do you do that humanely?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
starting to see some of
It's not a
the
clean. It's just not something you can do really clean.
I
It's
know.
not, and it's not something I'm glad that has to be done, but it has to be done.
Well, I know they're
There's
gonna
a just a level that we've hit where we're always going to have some level of immigration issues because of the way that our immigration system is set up. But we're well past the acceptable contingency here. So
yeah. Well,
sorry to pick on
they
that.
did note that the first few years are going to be focused on obviously violent criminals, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of those to go after that'll crunch some of the bandwidth, and hopefully there'll be some additional policy that will find some healthy level and balance between how to approach this. Like you said, it's a big thing. It's got to be done. How do you do it in a humane
Yeah,
manner?
I
Obviously those are
love I love migrants. Immigrants might I don't know how you say it properly, whatever. Come to America by all means. This is one of the best countries amongst a handful that exist on this planet. And I will tell you, I want everybody to have the opportunity. It just can't take away from somebody else that already is here.
yeah.
And the problem is we're at the point where that's what's happening. And it sucks. Everybody's been in a situation where you want to continuously pour out, but you just can't. And I think a lot of people feel that way. All of us would give and support people and monetarily if we could, we just can't.
Yeah.
So we're at that point where we can't. We have other stuff we have to deal. We have our national debt we have to deal with. Let's get all that figured out. And then once we got that ball rolling, you know what? We want to revisit cranking those borders open a little bit because we can afford to do it. We have the facilities and the infrastructure and the means to go about it. We're not trillions of dollars in debt going up by billions of dollars a day. Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's play our heartstrings a little bit here. But right now, we got other stuff we got to get figured out before we do that.
Well, speaking of people wanting to come in, we've also got a 1,514% surge in Americans looking to move abroad after Trump's
Oh, I
election
was like, where
victory.
is this number?
So,
Uh, Good,
yeah, if you hate your
self-deportation.
country And just because you don't like who your country picked, I mean, it's wild to me to see the
Ellen
Trump.
DeGeneres did it.
She did it. Well, I think there's more there. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff with between her
Oh, of
and
course, of
Diddy, and
course. I
if
hear.
she
I
knows
will say
there's
she did move.
she did. She
She
put her
did
money where her
move.
mouth was at. But I
Yeah.
think there's more of a reason behind that than just Trump, probably because there's going to be some stuff coming to light that may not look so good for her. Not sure. That's just my assumption. But we do have the right and the left working together on some issues. When you got Senator Bernie Sanders said he's open to working with President-elect Donald Trump to cap credit card interest rates. He has been engaging with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy on the audit and the negligent spending of the Pentagon budget. So it's interesting to see like some lifelong Democrats that are really reaching their hand across the aisle and going, if we can just all collectively work together here, it'd be amazing to see what we can do when we're actually working together instead of consistently working against each other. And that's what I'm hopeful and excited for in this next 4 years is one that hopefully the Trump administration isn't going to face as many roadblocks and hurdles as they once were, and that we can actually collectively, collaboratively work on solving some of these America First issues and be on the same team for once. Now, obviously, politics doesn't necessarily work that way, and nor is it set up that way, but it seems like now more than ever there's conversations happening that would have never happened one over the last 4 years or really the last few decades, it feels like.
Yeah, and it's exciting to get back to that.
Yep.
It's there's all like I said, there's always going to be differences, but I think about like I'm a 49er football fan. It's been a hard year to be a 49er fan. Shout out to all my Niner fans out there.
Mm,
There's the Rams that they have a rivalry with, and the Seahawks. Man, they when they're on the field and it's time to work and they're going hard, and when it's up to a game and it's hyping it up, they're going at each other's throats. But do you know that they can set aside their differences and go to a charity event and help get together for a cause that's bigger than themselves? And I think a lot of people get so caught up in like the politics and make it about themselves, really. It's kind of a selfish thing, and they forget that there's a whole lot of other moving parts. I mean, there's a
yep.
lot of people that don't get involved at all in politics ever in their life. They don't vote, they don't care and their world moves forward.
Yeah.
And their days go on and they have successful lives. Politics does not affect your day to day as much as you think it does.
Yeah.
It's important. It affects policy, which typically affects business, which if you're a business owner, like a lot of the people that we're talking to, or an entrepreneur, like a lot of the people that we're talking to, that does affect you.
Yeah.
But for most people, it's not going to change your day to day much. It's honestly as bad as there being traffic on the freeway and there being a surface street route to go around. It might take you a little bit longer, but you got a different way to get there. So I'm excited for the cooperation to come back and there not to be such this wide divide, because that is when things happen right in front of our noses that aren't good for either party, no matter which way you think, lean, or vote.
Yeah. Well, speaking of some policy and how this may impact the economy, individual investors, business owners, for the first time in history, a U.S. president is threatening 100% tariffs against 9 countries at once. Trump announced over the weekend that BRICS countries who threaten to replace the U.S. dollar will incur 100% tariffs. What does this mean? Is there anything to look into here? And how does this impact the dollar or some of the foreign negotiations that Trump is going to be stepping into pretty quickly?
I think that the biggest thing to like keep in mind is, first of all, I don't think anybody's putting 100% tariff on anybody. I would be very interesting to say the least if that happened. What I do think is going on here is just as it is ridiculous to assume or think that the BRICS members could form some sort of union to circumvent settling trade in the US dollar, which they can't, and influence major world powers to switch their reserve currency from the US dollar, which they can't. Trump is that making another kind of like out there statement that's like, hey, this is obviously not something I'm probably going to do, but hey, let's just say something stupid to something stupid. I will put 100% tariff on these countries and any country that works with these countries because really, like, they're not massive financial powers. It's a little shocking to see India a part of it. They're a big ally of ours, but more from a military trade. We don't trade a lot of goods back and forth with them. They're still like in a development stage as an economy. They're a massive population zone. So similar to China, they have that going for them. But yeah, it's a big, again, the whole BRICS thing to me, I just kind of sit back and laugh. It's a bunch of BS. These countries are just doing it to just posture, piss off really the United States, um, and cause confusion, I think, among people, which is they're being successful with that at least. But it's really not anything. I think it's a great thing that Trump said that. I
Yeah.
don't think it's a bad thing at all. If he said I'm going to put 100% tariff on Canada, I would not be so happy with that. That's the type of stuff you don't say, and you say in a back room directly to Justin Trudeau's face. You don't put that out in the public, right? And you
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
it in a way to emphasize a point. You don't actually do it, which is why you say it in the back room. So I'm not worried that he said it about the BRICS countries. And I think people should, at this point, have had 10 years of Trump. I think we should kind of learn how to read through some of the things that he says and know that what he says, not that he doesn't do what he says, but he may not do it in the way that he's saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you've ever read his book, The Art of the Deal, one of the things that he likes to do is somewhat come into negotiations with a bull in a china shop type of mentality and say things off the wall to kind of confuse you and like be like, is he being serious? Like he leaves you feeling uncertain, right? And that's part of the aloof of his negotiating power and strength and strategy is not letting you feel like you know where you stand, right? And so I think that is, like you said, sometimes like, is he being serious? Like, what's going on here? Um, but I think the US dollar, the strength of the US dollar, that's still obviously a discussion. The national debt and the levels that it's at is a concern.
yep.
The US dollar statistically has lost 20% of its purchasing power since 2020. So obviously the concerns around inflation spiking again is a concern for how that impacts the dollar. We had some updates on CPI numbers. Was it last
Last
week?
week. Yeah, they were all they weren't CPI, they were PPE.
They were PCE, right?
Yeah, PCE, thank you. Producer cost expenditure. PCE, which is an inflationary data point. They were in line. So it was inflation data that was in line. They weren't like, wow, this is some crazy beat. Oh, we're getting a negative read on. Wasn't that? It was, hey, this is exactly what we expected, which I'll take. I honestly don't want one thing one way or the other because I don't want a huge surprise to the positive and then the market to take off and that skew another data point that then rips it the other way. I'm happy with inline data right now.
Yeah.
This week we have jolts on Tuesday and we have
Non-farm payrolls.
non-farm payrolls and one other unemployment rate. There we go as
Yep.
well. And I think we're expecting unemployment to go to from 4.1 to around the 4.2 range. That'd be great. I've said it a few times back in March. I think unemployment needs to be around 4.4. That's my number. I don't know how good of a number that is. That just looked good back then, still looks good now. So we're creeping up towards that. Non-farm, I mean, absolute garbage print last time, 12,000 and negative after the revision. So pretty much a nothing burger. I think we're
Yep.
expecting around 200 to 240,000 on the payroll from the non-farm and private side. As long as we don't get a July 2023 or excuse me, July 2022, which was literally the biggest, it still scars me to this day. That was the biggest shock on the payroll report I've ever seen in my career. Absent that, we should be fine. I think those two data points the Fed is going to be looking at jolts less than the payroll and unemployment rate. And they're going to be looking at that to confirm their suspicions that, yes, another 0.25% rate cut from the 4.5 low end to the 4.25 low end on the Fed funds rate is a good idea. And I agree with that. Moving forward, I think what they're going to imply is it may be some sort of like a hawkish cut where they cut, but they say, hey, this may be it for a little bit And so that could shake the market a bit. So I think investors should be still putting money into the market, still taking advantage of opportunities because there's lots of them. Because this time next year, when we're talking, no matter if you bought now or bought after President Trump gets in and the market settles, things are going to be probably worth more money next December. So it's a good idea to still get your money in so it can work. With all that being said, I think we should have an awesome year. We're looking somewhere on the low end. I think I'm gonna put my number out to be around 66 to 6,800 for the end of year S&P. That's about a 10 to 12% move from where we are now. That could be low. I hope it is, but I'm
Yeah.
happy with a 10% growth in the market.
I was going to say, man, I mean, everything that we thought was going to be aggressive ended up being low for the year.
If we had a year like we had this year, we'll be at around 73, 74 on the S&P this time
That
next year, which
that
would be
that feels insane.
absolutely welcomed. There's no
Of course it
problem
would.
with that. I would love to see that happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. I welcome it. I think 66 and 68 is definitely quantifiable right now given what the market looks like. We have a lot of policy change ahead of us. So there's going to be a lot of things happening between now and then that could affect that to the upside or the downside. But I would tell investors to look forward to at least 10% plus growth in the S&P next year.
Well, that's kind of to your point that you mentioned earlier, right? That once the administration change takes place, there's going to be some absorption time to take into account all the different policy changes, the viewpoints, the kind of future forecasting of what those things are going to do and how the market, businesses, the economy, globally, domestically are all going to react to those things, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a transitional time frame for digesting all of that. But like you said, still some opportunities, and the overall sentiment is that we're going to end up higher than where we're at today this time next year. Now,
Yeah.
a big shakeup that could tie into potentially seeing that number that feels so far out of reach potentially becoming a reality is the 24-hour market index. Is 24-hour trading on the horizon, and is that potentially a catalyst for driving the market up to those numbers, or does that not really play a role if it were to be open for trading 24/7, 365?
So 24-hour trading is already available, kind of.
Okay.
And it depends on what broker or custodian you're at or your professional level of trading, right? If you're like myself and you're considered a professional trader. But I think what's going to happen with this advent, kind of like crypto, how on Saturday at 3 p.m. you can transact just like you can on Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Friday, Thursday. You're going to see that become more mainstream, which even though it's around, it's still not. I think the people that are using it now, just like when crypto first came around, are the early adopters to it. Today, and in the finance world, this is going to be day traders, larger institutions, hedge funds, people that know how the system works. So I don't think that that's going to be a catalyst in the short term. But what I do think is that it's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to allow people to be a little more with their money because there's not these gates anymore, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people like don't invest in hedge funds in the accredited investment world because the withdrawals are gated, typically quarterly. That's a fancy word for meaning can't get your money out unless we tell you you can. But in essence, when you have money in the stock market, you're gated. I mean, if it's the market's not open and it's the weekend, you cannot transact in your account. So you're gated for periods. So I think removing that will make people feel like they have more, and they do, more liquidity to their assets. And it should also smooth out. I know this is going to sound wild. It should actually smooth out volatility
Mm.
because people don't have to make bets on Friday for what's going to happen Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
Another thing it does is it democratizes, and I mean that in a fairness way, trading because now institutions don't have hey, the market's closed, let's go play. They're going to have to figure out how to trade these big blocks of securities on an open forum. Will they still do it during probably the 1 a.m.s, 2 a.m.s? Probably. They probably still will, but it's going to be in purview of the retail investor now.
Yeah.
So they may not do billions or multiple $1 billion transactions like they do in dark pools, which is right now where the majority of big trades take place, more than 70% of them. We talked about that a couple years ago on our podcast.
Yep.
So I think that that's a good thing overall for the investor. The negative I see that it provides is I think it's going to make people think they're a little smarter than they are, which is already happening. And I have a job for a reason. And it's going to encourage people to gamble, I guess, more. And it's okay to take risk when you understand the reward and the setup for that. But what I typically see is people doing really good and doing really well when it's not hard to do it, and then doing really, really bad when things go bad, worse than everybody else is, and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Because that's when it's hard to be an investor, is when there's volatility. What do you do when there's volatility? What am I getting rid of? What am I holding? And that's a hard decisions to make. And you have to know how to make those decisions with experience that I don't even have. That's why we have a team. And balls. I mean, I don't know the term. You have to be brave. You have to take risk in order to get reward. And volatility, as we've said multiple times, is the price that people pay for that reward. Sometimes we make a trade, it's up 0.5% the day that we buy it, and then the next day it's down 2%.
Yep.
Welcome to investing. That's how it works. But if we fast forward the clock 12 months, it's up 60%. It's paid dividends every quarter since then. You have to just have a long-term mindset with stocks. It's not if I had the mindset with stocks that people have with my real estate. My home price is down 60 grand in the past 2 months, so I should probably sell my house, right? No, no, I'm not going to make long-term decisions off of short periods of time. So,
Now, you mentioned a little bit about crypto and
yeah.
the similarities of those two markets, or those kind of two approaches, and how there may be some seen benefits to that. Transitioning and shifting over to crypto, Bitcoin sitting around 95,000. Looks like some other coins or investments are hitting all-time highs. What's going on in the crypto market right now, and how is the crypto market kind of shaping up as we close out the year?
Well, the some of the altcoins that are more established, so Ripple, Cardano, uh, some other smaller projects, they're really having, and I'm not the crypto expert. Okay, I don't ever never coined myself, no pun intended to be. I don't like Bitcoin. I've said that very clear. I don't own any Bitcoin personally. I think that those projects are starting to have their day because the utility component of them is better understood. They've been around long enough now. Bitcoin's been around long enough now. The original big adopted cryptocurrency, right? Not the very first, but one of the very original large adopted ones. And they're starting to have their heyday. I mean, I saw Ripple take 3% of the total crypto market in the past week as far as for market cap
Big
space.
deal.
It's a pretty big deal. They're still a really small project in comparison, and a lot of people, the Bitcoiners, don't like these projects that they work with corporations and work with the government. And but ultimately, that's what's going to happen for any sort of major adoption to happen. I think, like I said last time we've talked about this, that the ultimate end goal for these will be to transact securities or information or data in an open way that's secure, but ultimately it'll still to be moved to move US dollars, right? Or whatever currency you're settling in. So I'm not necessarily, I think we have a crypto bull run coming. I don't know where it's at. I don't know when it's going to stop. I think we're in some sort of bull market. I think a lot of that, though, is done because of the SEC chair that was just elected. I don't know if people, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just know that the incoming administration says they're more favorable to crypto. That has translated through in the past 30 days into the market. We've seen triple-digit returns. What will happen next year? Favorite word to say. Time will tell.
Time will
Am
tell.
I becoming more of a fan of it as a 0.1% of my portfolio? Absolutely. I think the returns are great, but it's pure speculation.
Yeah.
It's honestly, I look at when I do prop bets and when I put money into the crypto market as the exact same. I'm willing to lose every dollar because the
Let it
return,
ride, baby.
yeah, because the return's great. So
Yeah.
I'm willing to lose every dollar. That's why I'm a parlay better. That has not changed for me. So until when it's institutionally adopted, that is when I will become more of an expert on it because I don't know how it's going to be used. But to this day, there's been not one person that can give me a solid use case for Bitcoin. It doesn't do anything that a dollar doesn't do. It just doesn't. That's why it's valued in US dollars. So I want to see some value and utility. Somebody's cringing. I can like feel it in my heart right now. I want to see more utility. I want to see mass adoption. I want to see the adoption by the big boys. I want to see BlackRock. I know they have their ETFs. We've already explained why they file ETFs. It's so they can bill you on stuff. Don't be dumb. I want to see them adopt it and use it, and then be successful at using it. And then I will know how it can be. Then I'll be more of an expert. Until then, I'm speculating just like everybody else.
Well, going over to one of your famous sentiments that you're always harping on, right, is just staying invested and trusting that if today is going to be lower than what tomorrow long term in the future is going to generate for you if you're an investor, and that has not changed on any front when it comes to real estate. Pending home sales climbed 2% in October, the third month in a row of positive growth, and gains were seen across all four major US regions. The West leading the way with a 16.8%
Ooh,
year over year jump. So if
I
you were
didn't
one
see
of those
any of that, man.
individuals waiting, sitting on the sideline, I think prices are going to cool off and come down, even with rates doing what they did over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Not
You missed out on potentially 17% growth in equity in your home, depending on what kind of property you bought, by just sitting and waiting on the sidelines. Right. So I think it's always a good reminder. I've talked to tons of people. Oh, I'm going to wait. Oh, I think rates are going to come down. Oh, I think more inventory is going to hit the market. Oh, I think I'm going to be able to negotiate a better deal. Whatever that narrative was that makes people feel more comfortable, the best time to buy real estate is always yesterday. And if you're in it for the long haul, you're going to be somebody that benefits from that. So that was an interesting statistic that just came out this last week with reporting. Now, on more of the other side of the coin, you've got the delinquency rate on commercial mortgage backed securities, CMBS loans, for offices specifically spiked to 10.4% in November, which is the highest since 2013. The delinquency rate on office CMBS loans has soared by more than 5 times over the last 2 years, and they are rising faster than they did during the 2008 financial crisis. So this puts the office CMBS delinquency rate on track to exceed a record of 10.7, which was the peak in 2000. Meanwhile, the overall US CMBS delinquency rate has risen from 4.6 to 6.4% over the last 12 months, which is the highest since 2020. So this commercial real estate crisis that so many people have been talking about. Now, again, I think it's asset specific, it's market specific. This isn't just one broad stroke across all of the commercial real estate asset classes, but you can definitely see the pressure mounting in certain sectors like office, in certain markets. And this is generally going to be in your institutional level type of prices, right? Your little local neighborhood office building is not going to have a CMBS loan on it, likely is not going to be at a distressed level. That these are for your big institutional core plus tier one type of assets, A locations, class A assets. And there's definitely some repricing, some retrading happening behind the scenes right now. And these are going to be some loans significantly that are coming due in the next year. And the delinquency rate, in my opinion, is going to continue to surpass that 2012 number. So that is, again, when you see kind of the market does what the market does, right? Like it finds its bottom, whether you like it or not, it's going to find its bottom. And then based on where it bottoms out, the market is going to tell us when it's bottomed out. And we're going to know that because the economics are going to fall back in alignment where whether it's office coming back to fruition and people going back in and businesses starting to reinvest in those markets and lease up those types of assets, or right, it's developers and it's communities and it's municipalities collaboratively working together saying, hey, let's repurpose these assets and find new uses for them. Yep. And the cost of doing that is now going to make sense because we've got these things in line. That's where you have to consistently have your head on a swivel and just understand that this is all a math equation at the end of the day, right? And where people think it makes sense financially to take the amount of risk that they can get in those assets by deploying dollars there, or hey, I can get this type of return in a much safer capacity in the stock market, right? That's where you start to see rotation in and out of things, just like you do in the stock market. We see the same thing that happens with commercial real estate assets and where dry powder and dollars chase deals and opportunities because the math equation is back in line and makes sense. So that's where I think we're really going to start to see some more opportunity probably come into the marketplace on the tail end of 2025 in commercial real estate as we see some of that new administration flush out, some of their policy flush out. You see what they reinstate or what they completely rip out and gut and rebuild. But we do know that there's some things that the train is already out of the station on some of these commercial real estate assets that are facing some pretty large headwinds. And that's going to create some opportunity. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like in 2025. But on a mom and pop level, there are still plenty of opportunities out there. There's always people dying, divorcing, and looking for ways to get their cash liquid out of investment opportunities based on life events happening. So I am very proactive in looking for those types of opportunities right now. I'm excited to see what other people are finding. We got some people in the Wise Investor Collective Mastermind group that have found some great deals in like the last 30, 45 days. And I think that trend is going to continue to kind of find some of those needles in the haystack for those that are proactively looking and building relationships and just not being afraid of the market, right? Just like on your side of the fence, if you're not afraid of the market and you always, I love your quote of there's a bull market somewhere always. You just got to figure out where that is. It's the same thing. There's a needle in a haystack home run type of deal always in commercial real estate or in the real estate industry. You just got to find out where that is. So we'll be paying attention. The data obviously is what gives us confidence on maybe what trends to follow or what paths to walk down and investigate a little bit more, what areas you may want to steer clear of. And that's why we track all this data for you guys each and every week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's show. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll have more updates next week. And until then, keep investing in yourself and your wealth on your march to $1 million and beyond. We're out. Peace.
Here's y'all. Boom.